So the Toronto Star is reporting that restaurants and retailers are having some trouble hiring, and some are blaming CERB and income support programs for spoiling workers. But why do you think people aren't returning to work?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't call CERB spoiling people, especially when you'd be hard-pressed to rent a one-bedroom apartment in most Canadian cities for less than $1,500 a month. That leaves you $500 a month to live on. I have friends who were saved by CERB, like they did not go into excruciating debt or lose their homes because of it allowed them to stay afloat, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Spoiling is a funny word to use because I think just wanting like a fair wage for a job, I don't know that that's spoiling somebody if they don't want to go back to work. And I think I go back to the beginning of this pandemic when we started to hear the word essential worker, and we were so thankful for every essential worker. And that also means often low-wage workers. When this pandemic started to ravage its way through long-term care homes, we started to understand that there had been, for a long time, a crisis in long-term care. And why? Because PSWs are leaving the industry, personal support workers. They are leaving the industry in droves because they are overworked, they are underpaid, they are burnt out, and they get injured. And so they were like, why do I need to come back? And so when I hear the story about the servers, not just servers, it's very hard for restaurants to find back-of-house staff now, whether you've got the dishwasher, the cooks. They're having to attract them with higher wages, higher tip-outs from servers, because they don't want to come back for many reasons that I understand, and not the least of which is, holy cow, I have been undervalued and overworked and underpaid my whole life. And isn't that fair for anybody to ask in any workplace? And the question for us as the public is, are we demanding loudly enough that these essential workers that have literally carried us through this pandemic get a fair wage? So don't
they could start
and don't say spoiled. It's get a fair wage.
People could start by hanging up their clothes when they go and try on a bunch of stuff at retail stores, huh? That would help, I'm sure.
I think a big part of this actually can be explained through by the lack of stability with restaurants opening and closing during this whole pandemic. I know a restaurant owner who laid off like more than 100 people and rehired them 3 times. And the last time he did it during remember when they allowed restaurants to open up, he hired back 120 people. Only 4 days later had to let them go again. So these people are desperate to find something more stable, even if just for the paperwork. And I think that explains their reticence in going back to this industry. Like, why bother? I'm just going to get laid off again in the 4th or 5th wave.
Although, is there a certain amount of privilege with that kind of availability? I don't know. I'm just thinking that there's the other side of this, which is like, who will these jobs eventually go to? And I just think more and more people who have no other options. And then, so does that, it all change sort of the equity piece of this? I don't know.
We have a comment here from Samantha on Facebook. Clearly, I mean, I think that this conversation is so nuanced that people don't really understand the intricacies of what it is to work in hospitality. As Samantha says, though, get rid of CERB. There are plenty of jobs, and we're in recovery mode. And, Samantha, appreciate you sharing that with us, because I don't think Samantha's alone in thinking this. And I do think also it goes back to really knowing what goes into what those jobs entail and who is working those jobs. I think most people are familiar with, like, all actors at one point waited tables, right? Yeah. You wait tables in between auditions. So my point in saying this is that many people who are in the hospitality industry, who are servers in restaurants, they're doing it as a stopgap. It's not like a career for long term. It's something that you do while you're waiting to make your dream job happen. And the thing with coming back to that, there you go, Cynthia. So when you come back, people are saying people aren't coming back to the restaurant industry. Well, in this year and a half, what a lot of those people did was actually pursue their real dream, going back to school or writing or, finally finishing the manuscript. And so a lot of the gap in that workforce has to do with the fact that the people who were just waiting tables as a stepping stone to get to where they wanted to go are going to where they wanted to go.
Okay, I'm going to ask an ugly question, though. Isn't the very heart of capitalism the necessity to always have somebody doing the worst of the worst jobs? What does it mean for an economy when everyone chases their dream? It's a serious question. Somebody has to be filling these low-wage workers, the hospital cleaners, the grocery store clerks, the people who are stacking your stuff. Like, I actually, you ask that serious question. That is now, when you talk about nuance, that's the classism that is baked into the system, that in capitalism, someone's always got to be at the bottom.
Hey, we got a comment on Facebook from DC. He said, one guy told me he left his part-time bartender job that he had for 10 years because the owner insisted that the servers give 20% of their tips to the owner to help recover losses during the pandemic. That's rotten. But I will say in my limited experience that the restaurant owners and the people I know in the business are actually finding that because there is such a shortage, jobs are looking good. Like, they're getting paid way more than they did before. And there have to be perks in order to bring people back, which is positive. But DC, that's terrible.
Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on.